Hey guys, it's Kevin again. Season of the WGN America show, Outsiders, and guys, I was definitely very interested in this show. As you guys can tell, this was the next show that I started binging. I actually started binging it after Shadowhunters. I just never got the chance to finish it till now, and we'll get into that in a second, but basically, going into this show, I wouldn't have watched the show. I really would have had no interest in watching it, but I've had numerous requests last year asking me, why didn't you review Outsiders? You love Outsiders. You should watch Outsiders. So I said, okay, I will give Outsiders a chance this year, and I finally gave it a chance, and after watching it, thank God I did, because, I heard many great things about it, and yeah, this show is pretty great. I really did love this first season of Outsiders. I think it is a very well done show that has really great characters, as well as a very interesting story going on. It's very underrated. I don't really hear many people talk about it, and it is quite unfortunate because it is a very well-written show, and we're going to get into all aspects of that, but first let's get to the plot of Outsiders, which I really do love the plot of the show. The plot of the show is a bit complex, not confusing, just complex. Basically, our main storyline focuses on the Farrell clan. They are a group of homesteaders who, they're various family members, and they have been living on this land for basically as long as they can remember. They live here since they were born, and they pretty much go against the times. They live in the Appalachian Mountains, basically, but they have lived there pretty much all their lives, and they don't really go with the times. They kind of forego electricity and things like that, and they have had control for a very long time. However, there is a local construction crew who wants to, put land there and basically take their land from them, and thus basically begins the struggle of control between the Farrell clan as well as, the Farrell clan, and everyone else who tries to take ownership of their land, and in the midst of it all is this cop, Wade Houghton, who has clearly been affected by the Farrells and for some reason wants to do whatever he can to stay out of it, and that basically is the plot of Outsiders overall, but that's just the bulk of what really makes the show so great, so let's just get into it, starting off with the cast. Now, something that really elevates a show like this is the cast, because when it comes to this show, there are a lot of characters, and there's a lot of storylines to keep up with, but luckily the cast very graciously is up to the task, and really everyone gives a great performance here. I don't really know if I can find a standout in this show because everyone really is great. But let's get to our titular main character, who it's kind of debatable who our main character really is because this is an ensemble show. However, in this first season, our main character is without a doubt David Morse as Big Foster, and this guy is a powerhouse. I mean, obviously he is. David Morse has been in a lot of things before. This is obviously not his first role. He's very famous for many things, but his character in Outsiders, Big Foster, is definitely a force to be reckoned with, because this is a guy who, you can tell that at points he seems like, this guy who's very loyal and has a lot of leadership qualities, and he's so obsessed with becoming the Brennan. Now, the Brennan is basically the leader of the entire clan, the master manipulator, so to speak. He wants to do whatever he can to get that role, which his mother currently has, and he's quite jealous of her because of that. And at times, you're really on his side, and you can really see where he's coming from. But then there are a lot of moments throughout the show where he'll make these terrible decisions, and he'll say some horribly nasty things, especially once we get to the second half of the season, which is full spoilers, guys, so I'm just going to get into it now. Eventually, Big Foster actually does end up killing Lady Ray, his mother, and he does, in fact, become the Brennan. And when he's become the Brennan, that's when this character gets scary. And I mean, he gets scary. I mean, this is a guy you do not want to mess with. He treats everyone like shit. He makes everyone follow his orders. He's very, obedient. He makes everyone be very obedient, and he's someone that you're very much afraid of, but he's not unlikable. There's a sense of him where you can really understand why he's doing this, that in his mind, he is doing this for the good of the clan, but he is definitely a control freak at points, and he's a character that could come across by a lesser actor as, I think, very annoying, and I think very, very unlikable, and just not someone who you root for. And I wouldn't say you're rooting for Big Foster. You're more, he's more naive, and you're more kind of, not irritated, that's not the word, but you're more kind of, I think, just kind of disappointed by what he's doing, because this is a guy who genuinely isn't a bad guy, but he's so focused on taking ownership and things like that, and David Morse does an incredible job with fleshing out this character to his full potential. He was so great in this role. There's so many interesting things this character goes through psychologically, mentally, and he really portrayed that very, very well. I love the way that was done here. He was absolutely fantastic in this show. He's definitely one of the highlights, and if he was not on the show, I don't think the show would be nearly as good as it is, but luckily, the rest of the cast, like I said, is just as great. But David Morse definitely is one of the highlights by far. However, really, I think the main character of this entire show, even though Big Foster is the main character of this season, you could really argue that the main character of this show is Joe Anderson as Asa, because Asa is a character who kind of is our titular outsider of this season, because he basically is someone who, he went to war, so he's been away from the clan for a while, and you can tell it didn't work out for him. It's really hard in him. He's not the same man that he used to be. He doesn't really fit in with the rest of the clan there, and there's a lot of unfinished business that he left with the clan, and he's frowned upon by everyone, honestly, obviously because he abandoned them, but you really do feel for Asa as a character. You get the sense this is a guy who always wants to do the right thing, and this is someone who knows what's best for the clan, but no one is willing to trust him or put him in that leadership role that he really should have. I mean, honestly, he should be the Brennan. He's very good at putting things in order, and he's very negotiable, and he's very reasonable as well. Like, he'll definitely listen to people, and there's a lot of interesting storylines going on, especially between him and Gwen, who we'll get into the character of Gwen in a second, but his character was fantastic. I love the way Joe Anderson was done in the show. He's one of the characters you feel the worst for, because he's just getting shit on pretty much the entire season by everyone. It's not till an episode where he's eventually offered a job by someone who works at the construction crew, it's not till then that he actually gets some sense of satisfaction and some sense that someone actually wants me around. A lot of the show, he feels very neglected. People are just doing whatever they can to avoid themselves from him. But Joe Anderson was so great. He had so much pathos into this role. You really do care about Asa. He's a fantastic character, and I really did love the direction that he took the character throughout the show, because he really was fantastic. Something else the show does really well is what it does with its female characters, because there aren't many of them. There really are not. I mean, this is a show that is very dominant by males, which is understandable because of the kind of show it is, but the female characters in here are great, especially Gillian Alexy as Gwen, because Gwen is a character that is very strong and very self-sufficient and very much knows what she wants to do, and I really did love her character throughout the show, because again, there's a lot of past between her and Asa. These two, it's revealed very early on, these two did in fact used to date, and they go into a bunch of different types of situations where Asa kind of wants to get closer to her, but she's in a relationship with someone else at the time, and they could have made it a very wooden, cheesy storyline, but you get the sense that this is a relationship of despair and inconvenience, and you can see that Gwen, I think as much as she cares about Asa, she knows she can't be with him because, one, it just wouldn't be loyal to the family because he's not really a Farrell anymore, and two, she's going to do whatever she can to keep herself safe and keep herself in the best position she can, and I really did love the way that she did that throughout the show. But what I also love about Gwen is that she really is the one pulling all of the strings in the second half of the season, especially once Big Foster starts to go way too far. She's the one who's actually trying to construct, a group to take him down, and I really did love the direction that she went throughout the show. She was a very strong female character. I love the way that her character was done. I thought that she was fantastic overall, and there's some very heart-wrenching scenes with her character. I thought they really did a good job of getting into her overall. She was really fantastic, and I really love what Gillian Alexy did throughout the show. A very strong female character, and again, because there's not many of them, she really does stand out, and she really was fantastic throughout the show, especially in the second half of the season. Really was incredible there. Big Foster's wife, because Big Foster, he has to choose his queen, and he actually chooses Gwen to be his queen, and there's a lot of obviously, betrayal here, because he's betraying his own son. You get that sense, and his son is very much mad at him, but he's also betraying Asa, who we know really wanted to be with Gwen and had a past with her, and he's completely neglecting all of them. The way that Gwen very much pretends to, appreciate what he's doing and really give in to him, but in reality is really plotting his own death, is extraordinary, the way she goes about it. And again, Gillian Alexy just did such a great job with channeling that very devious side to her that you don't think this character is going to have. The start of the show, they make you think this character is going to be used to be in a love triangle, and that's not the case at all. I mean, her character is a lot more interesting than that. There's a lot more layers to her, and that's something I really did not expect, is this amount of badassery to her character. But it's not badass in the sense where it's like, oh, she can kick ass, she's a badass. No, she genuinely is a badass with the way she handles things. She really knows how to go about things, and she's very organized in the way she does that stuff, and I really do love the way that was portrayed throughout the show, and again, was another great trait that Gwen really had. Now, a character who I thought they could have given a little bit more to do, but they didn't really do a ton with, is Ryan Hurst as Lil Foster, who is Big Foster's eldest son, and has one of the most compelling arcs of the entire season, because the entire season, one, he is trying to carry on this relationship with Gwen, but the biggest thing about his character is that he really is trying to get on Big Foster's good side, because Big Foster is so focused on this idea of power, and this idea of basically, being a monarchy. He doesn't just want to be the Brennan, he wants to be king. He wants everyone to be his royal subjects, and he's so focused on that he doesn't really focus a lot on his son. And Lil Foster's doing every he can to get back on Big Foster's good side, and it's very sad to see Big Foster kind of just, not treat him like shit, that's not the word, but very much leave him unnoticed. He doesn't really appreciate his son that much. He doesn't really say thank you to him. He doesn't really reciprocate the feelings that Lil Foster has for him, and it's very sad overall. I like his character. It's just towards the second half of the season, they don't really do a ton with him. He's in a relation with Gwen. There's stuff going on there, but I'm not going to lie, there were times I really forgot he was on this show. I just felt he was a character that was kind of forgotten about, and I get that that's kind of the character, but they just didn't really do a ton with him. I felt like they could have done a lot more regarding him and Big Foster's arc, but after a little bit, after I think like episode 6, they kind of just abandoned it, and after that, they didn't really know what to do with the character. But Ryan Hurst was so good that he still does stand out in this show, and he still was fantastic, and that really does show how great all the characters really are. Now, the other big storyline going on in this season is this subplot between Kyle Gallinar's character, Hassel Farrell, and Christina Jackson as Sally Ann. Now, Hassel is someone who he kind of is, he's a drug dealer, and he stole some of the family's moonshine to give to a drug dealer and everything, and basically, he's lived a lot of his life on the mountain, and he really wants to learn more about the world, and you can understand why. I mean, they live on the mountain pretty much all their life. He wants to discover more of the world around him, so a lot of this season, Hassel is living actually away from the mountain. He is meeting with this girl, Sally Ann, who is one of the few black residents of Blackburg. Yes, I know the town's called Blackburg, that's just what it's called, but their relationship is very interesting, because Sally Ann's a character played by Christina Jackson, who, she's not really a fan of the Farrells. I mean, she's been told her entire life that the Farrells are the enemy, and that the Farrells are these devil, witch-like people, and that she shouldn't treat them with respect. She should treat them with despair and disgust and want nothing to do with them and shut down any opportunity she has to get close to them. But the second that she meets Hassel, she can tell that he's different from the rest. He shows her a lot of generosity and a lot of kindness, and very much shows that he actually does want to be there for her. And you get the sense that Sally Ann hasn't really had that a lot. She's kind of mentally and physically abused by her brother. It's very sad to see, but her character was also very well done. The relationship is very Romeo and Juliet-esque, but they did a good job of not making it too familiar to that of Romeo and Juliet, because where they take them at the end of the season definitely seems like that's not really where they're going to go with them, because eventually these two, at first, Big Foster and Sally, and not Big Foster, but Hassel and Sally, and they're very on and off throughout the show. Her brother does not at all approve of her being with Hassel. He really wants nothing to do with him. But then, towards the end of the season, Hassel does eventually get back to the mountaintop, top, which actually scares off Sally Ann. We don't know what's going to happen with them or if they're going to reconvene, but their relationship was very well done. I very much cared about them overall, and again, another very interesting plot to what was another one of the most compelling arcs. So it is the weakest arc of the season. They still were great, and I still felt very connected to them, but it's just because everything else is so great that's why their stuff is the weakest, but I still did love their characters overall enough for me to praise the storyline on that, especially for not going in the Romeo and Juliet route that they could have obviously gone in. Now, by far, one of the best characters on the show that I really did love is Thomas M. Wright as Deputy Sheriff Wade Houghton. I mean, this character is so fascinating. The second we meet him, we can just tell that he's not like the other law officials there. You know, he's not someone who just wants to go to the Farrells and just take them out one by one. He's not, it's not that he doesn't want to do that. He's not willing to do that. He almost seems like he's terrified of the Farrells. So you know that, you know, immediately that there's really a lot going on with him, that there's clearly a reason why he's so afraid of them and why they instill so much fear within Wade. And his character in general was very compelling. I really did love the direction where they went with Wade's character throughout the season. I thought they did a really good stuff with him, and he's given the assignment of trying to evict them from their mountain fortress, and we can tell that it's proven to be a very uprooting task for him, because there's obviously, it's a very big task to take on. There's a lot that really takes that, and we know how, you know, powerful that the Farrells really are, and we eventually find out, it's eventually, this is like episode 4, that the reason why Wade is so afraid of the Farrells is because he felt that they were the ones who caused his father's death, and because of that, he is very much afraid of them. But he also suffers through PTSD throughout the show, and he constantly has visions of things that aren't really there, and that could come across as pretentious for some, but because of us seeing how much the Wade is suffering and how much he's not himself throughout the show, I mean, constantly throughout the show, he's really getting worse. He really is. I mean, this show, especially this season, he really is put through the ringer. I mean, there's a brief portion of this season, not brief, there's actually 3 or 4 episodes, where he's trapped underground. He's separated from everyone else. You don't know if he's really going to make it, but Thomas M. Wright does such an incredible job as this character. He really is maybe the one you're rooting for the most throughout the entire show. You really want him to take that action, but you can understand why he's not. He knows the right thing to do. He knows he can't get involved, and he wants to do it as, you know, efficiently and as collectively as possible, and I really did love the way that character was done. I thought he did an incredible job in this show. He was another standout, and he is one of the many standouts in a very fantastic ensemble cast. I don't think gets nearly enough praise as they should. And you really do sympathize with Wade throughout the show, especially once he comes to the Farrell land and he's about to do whatever, you know, he's about to finally get to them and tell them to get off his land. And then the worst possible thing that could happen ends up happening, where he ends up actually running over a Farrell, and he has to do whatever he can to try to cover up this death, and you can just see the fear in him of him wanting to do whatever he can to get away from this, but him knowing that he is guilty, and that guilt looms over him throughout the rest of the season. And again, they really made you stick with Wade. Wade never did anything that I thought wasn't justifiable. I could completely understand Wade was coming to run throughout the entire show. He probably is one of the more reasonable characters. I think all the characters are somewhat reasonable, except for Big Foster. Big Foster is never reasonable, really. But I do think that Wade was very reasonable here. You could really understand what he was trying to do. And again, it's another reason why he's such a great character. So as I've established, the cast really is fantastic. They really all do an incredible job in their roles. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because the directing on the show is top-notch. I mean, they do such a great job with the tone of this show. What I really think they do a great job with is, a lot of people compare the show to Sons of Anarchy, and I think it is definitely a viable comparison. But what Sons of Anarchy didn't have that this show does have is, one, a lot of pathos with their characters, because Sons of Anarchy definitely had that, but there was an overabundance of it. And this show, while it definitely is violent and very emotional, it doesn't rely on it entirely. What it relies on most is its characters and the camaraderie between this clan, and really the way that this family gets destructed and the struggles that they've endured throughout the show. That's really what the show is trying to do, and I think they execute that tone brilliantly, I have to say. I mean, I was highly compelled into their story. I never really felt like they were taking away from it, and I thought they did an incredible job with really presenting the way that this family are, the way they do things. I mean, that's something that this first season really takes the time to do, and it's very fascinating in this show, you know, and we'll cut back and we'll see it's modern day, but they don't use cell phones, you know, almost every scene with them is in natural lighting, which these are just things that you don't see a ton anymore, and the thing is, there are people like that. There are people who live in the Appalachian Mountains who are very much like the characters on this show, and I think they did an incredible job, with showing that here. I really thought they did a very good job at showing a very rare type of culture, but a culture that is in fact very real, and that was something that was also very well done. This show even has a little bit of humor. There are definitely some parts that do make you laugh. Hassel especially is kind of the comic relief of the show. He's used for a lot of comic relief. He's very funny. He has a lot of really fun one-liners with Sally Ann, and the one thing I didn't expect to say about the show is that it's fun, but it is. It genuinely is a fun show, but there definitely is a lot of violence and a lot of dark directions the show really does go in, but they don't try to focus too much on it. You know, they try to keep the show not uplifting, but not completely tragic to the point where you want to kill yourself. It's not one of those kind of shows. It's a dour show, definitely, but it definitely does have its moments of fun, and that's something I definitely did love about the directing overall. But the writing on the show really is fantastic. I really did love the way that the show was written, because it sounds like a show you've heard a million times, and that's something that I was kind of worried about, is would this go in a very predictable direction? But it really doesn't, because yes, we do kind of have a war between the two clans, but this first season isn't the war, actually. The war doesn't happen till about the last, 15 seconds of the last episode. No, this is the journey in getting to that war, and I really love the way the show took its time with its writing, which is something that you don't really see a lot in these kind of shows, and this show really did do that. It took a lot of time to really get you into how both of these people work. Why do they hate the Farrells so much? Especially with, you know, this Farrell wine that gives people these crazy visions. It makes people go crazy. I mean, just in the first episode, there is a crazy teen party that's going on. You know, it's a normal teen party, but this one kid ends up obtaining, Farrell wine, basically from, you know, the person that had it, Crake, and he goes back to the party. He starts going crazy. He comes home, and he literally murders his father. I mean, it really shows that this is a dangerous family, and there's a lot of things they do, and they do need to be put to an end. You know, they don't try to get you to side with the Farrells. They show you that the Farrells, they're causing a lot of damage. There's a lot of things that they do that obviously the town is not happy about, and a lot of what's going on is because of the Farrells. But you do care about the Farrells at the same time, because this was their land, and this was something that they have had ownership of, you know, forever. Imagine if someone came to your home and told you, you can't live there anymore, you know, you can't live there anymore, causing all these problems, we're going to take the land from you. Obviously, you'd want to take a stand against them, and that's something the show really does a great job in presenting, is really showing why these two people would be at war, why these two people would be against each other. That's something they presented extremely well, and I really did love the way that show was done. And this season is very character-driven, I have to say. And again, it doesn't rely on violence. It focuses on the characters, and you know, the needs and wants of the characters, particularly that of Big Foster. I mean, he really starts to go crazy and crazier throughout the show, and he starts to become a lot more unreasonable. The more crazy he gets, and the more out of touch he really gets with reality, the less sane and the less reasonable he really becomes. He starts treating everyone like shit. He just starts killing people left and right, and you can really see why Big Foster is becoming a huge problem, and I really did love the direction that they took his character in, as well as all the other characters. They did a very good job with presenting that story, and again, I liked how slow-paced this really was. I thought overall they did a really incredible job with that, and they really also showed you what it meant to be the Brennan and be this leader. You know, what does that really mean to do? What is that really, you know, what are the tasks that you really need to do? What are the repercussions of you becoming that? What are the sacrifices that you have to make? Those are things that Big Foster does not take into consideration, and you can really see how it backfires on him throughout the show, and I definitely really did like that. My only complaint in terms of the Brennan is we really didn't get to know Lady Rayle that well. Lady Rayle is around the show for about maybe 7 episodes. I want to say episode 7 is when Big Foster actually kills her, which I like the way that that was kind of brushed aside, that he did kill her. Everyone pretty much knows that Big Foster is the one who killed Lady Ray. They know it's him that did it, but he just won't admit that he did it, and we kind of end the season with them having that knowledge but not being certain. Gwen knows that he killed her. Gwen, I know pretty much, she knows the way that Big Foster works, and I like that, but at the same time, you can really understand why he had to kill her. I just don't really think we got to know her all that well. That's another complaint that I did have, but the rest of that was very well done, showing the culture, showing the way they go about things. It's very different from the way you and I would do something, and they showed that very well here, and I definitely really did enjoy that. There are scenes where they're speaking in a completely different language, and it's completely, it's completely, believable, because again, there are people that live like this, and you get the sense that they're living off the grid. They're trying to be as, non-modern as possible. They're trying to be as away from, the normality. They don't believe in normality. They do things in their own way. They do things the way that they know how, and that's something I really did love about this show, is the way the show tells you, don't be normal, be different, be happy that you're different, and the show definitely has a lot of deep metaphors with that, and I definitely really did enjoy that. The cinematography here is top-notch. I believe they do actually shoot it in the Appalachian Mountains of Texas, and it is brilliantly shot. There are so many fantastic shots in this show, psychologically, physically. I mean, there are just so many shots that are incredibly well shot, and I love the way that the cinematography was done here. I don't know who helms the cinematography, but he did a really incredible job with it throughout the show, and the action as well. Most of the action scenes work very, very well. Maybe there was an episode or two where the action didn't work as well as it could have, and there was a little bit too much of it, but I do think that the action, for the most part, was very well handled. I thought it was very well driven, and I definitely did feel it throughout most of the episodes. When a character was in trouble, I genuinely felt for them, and that's because in the first episode, they actually do kill a child. Yes, they kill Big Foster's son in the first episode. It's insane that they actually did that, but they kill his youngest son, Enod, in the first episode, and from then on, you know that no one is safe, and you know that anyone can get killed at any time. So having that knowledge definitely makes us much more fearful of, is this going to be the last time we see this character? Is this character actually going to live throughout the show? And they did an incredible job of presenting that here, and I really did love the way that, again, that was handled. I thought the cinematography here was incredible. The score as well is really great. I love the intro of the show. I think the country music, but as well as the dark music here, just is really great in contrast, and I thought, also, the cinematography really does a good job in contrasting the difference between the mountain and then everything that's off the land and in the town. That was also very well handled, because you get that modern feel, and it reminds us it's in modern times, and I love the way the show is committed to tell us that even though they refuse to be upgraded to modern times and try to be, get the technology and things that we have and the resources and live like they're in colonial times, they don't. They stray away from it, and I just found that to be very compelling, the way the show presented that. The editing as well here is fantastic. I think every episode really did fly by for me. I was never bored with this show. I was definitely much more into it, much more than I was with Shadowhunter Season 1, that is for sure. I was pretty much into the show the entire time. There really wasn't a bad episode here, and definitely the editing, again, was very well handled. So now, guys, we are getting into spoilers for the end of the show, which I don't want you guys to know anything about. Definitely watch this show. If you haven't, give it a chance. It's very severely underrated. I don't think enough people know about it, but if you want a show that handles the struggle for control in a way you haven't really seen before and really shows a culture that hasn't really been presented, this is definitely a show that I think you should definitely check out. So if you guys want to know my grade, just stick around, and, when you see the spoiler thing go away, then I will tell you guys my grade of the season overall. But let's get into this, because there's a million things to talk about. I mean, so much happened in this finale. First of all, at the end of the 12th episode, as we know, Big Foster is under the he is under the knowledge that Asa was the one who wanted to kill him, because, Asa's been an outsider. He's treated Asa like absolute shits, so why not just kill Asa? And he's going to kill him. We think that he's killed Asa in the 12th episode, but the second the Big Foster said, everything's going to be okay now, we have nothing to worry about, and you see as he's saying that, he is, hallucinating Elon and he's comforting him, that's when you know everything is not going to be okay, because there's still this uprising that Gwen has created against him that Big Foster has no idea about. So he starts off this episode very confident that he's going to, you know, stay in charge and that he's going to be okay, but he does actually have a nightmare about him murdering his father, which is pretty crazy that we saw that. And he leaves his home to hunt the rest of the traitors with his posse, we see, basically. But Hassel and the rebels, they are determined to do whatever they can to kill Big Foster, because, again, he's gone way too far. He wants to kill way too many people. He's going to kill Crake, because, again, he feels that Crake is abusing the power and that he is selling too much Farrell wine and he doesn't want it to be exposed to the public and anything like that. So, again, you can kind of understand where he's coming from with that, but again, Big Foster, he's just going way too hard throughout this episode, and he's making all these different plans, and meanwhile, throughout this entire episode, we see that Wade's really had enough. You know, Wade's at the point where he's realizing they need to do something. You know, they can't just stand back. He can't just keep steering himself away from the Farrells. He needs to confront them, but he does make it known that he wants this to be in a very diplomatic way. He doesn't want to handle this in a way that's violent or aggressive. He just wants to politely talk to them and just try to, you know, see where they're coming from and see if they'll leave, and then maybe resort to more irrational matters if the situation needs it, you know. And I like the way that he wanted to go about this, because that is probably the best way to handle it. You know, he knows how dangerous they really are. He knows that if they get involved, they will definitely damage them, you know, severely, and he doesn't want to be involved with that, obviously. He doesn't want to be responsible for that, so I like the way that he did try to go about this in a very smart way. Problem is, that's not really the mentality that they have right now, because, again, they are under the mentality that's, you know, we know eventually Big Foster realizes that Gwen actually was the one wanting to kill him. There's this great scene where she's about to beat him up, but she just can't bring herself to do it. And it's not because of the fact that she's, you know, weak or something like that. It's because there is a there's a tribe and basically a prophecy that well, not a prophecy, but there is definitely this rule that they follow that one Farrell cannot kill another Farrell. That's just something that they've known all their life, and she's going to abide by that. You know, she's stuck by that her entire life, and she's going to abide by it. But you can tell in that scene, she wants to kill Big Foster. She wants to do whatever she can to kill him, and she thinks that little Foster will be the one to do it, but he's kind of a coward. He doesn't want to kill his own father, and you can understand why. I mean, he's wanted his father to accept him. Why would he want to kill him? Even though he took Gwen away, he's kind of just the pushover that's like, you know what, let him do what he needs to do, you know, don't let him get involved. If he wants to do, you know, let's just keep letting him do what he does. But Asa's had enough, and we see that Asa, he's about to go to Big Foster. Big Foster at this point is hallucinating that Lady Ray is there, and Asa just takes that chance, kills Big Foster, and Big Foster's dead immediately. Immediately, Big Foster's dead. Gwen then becomes the Brennan, and I think this is perfect that Gwen is the Brennan, because we've seen before that she is a very well-experienced leader, and she's very equipped to do all those things, so she definitely is the one, I think, that is most susceptible to become the Brennan, and I think that's definitely a direction that we're going to go in Season 2, is that she's the Brennan. But right as she's about to be the Brennan, we find out the 3 most dreaded words that they could hear, and that is that they are here. They, meaning the outsiders. They know they're on the land. They come face to face with them. You see that they are about to attack. Wade is just asking them, you know, what to do, and that, you know, he just wants them to leave and has to talk to them. They think that they're about to attack, and he sees a storm come ahead, basically showing, you know, the actual storm that's going to come, but also showing the metaphorical storm of, you know, war that's about to erupt, and that is the way we end this season. Really incredible stuff overall. But let's just get into where I think we're going to go in Season 2 and how well done this really was. So really, guys, this was a very well-done finale. I thought they did a very good job in leading us up to everything and really just showing us everything that we've needed to see. You know, we've seen Big Foster hallucinate, you know, Lady Ray throughout the show, the regret that he really does have in him. You can tell he really does regret it. You know, at the time, he did it selfishly. He did it out of a sense that he could be the Brennan, and, oh, I can finally get it. But now he's realizing what that task really means, and that he's really not, you know, the one to be the Brennan. He does not have have, he doesn't have that loyalty. He doesn't have that leadership, and he certainly doesn't have that compassion that you need to be the Brennan. You can tell that Lady Ray was the Brennan for so many years because she was very good at it. She was very strict, but she was also very fair, and that's something that Big Foster just wasn't, and you definitely saw that very well here. But it also was very well done for Asa, because as we know, Asa's now killed Big Foster, and there's no way he's going to be let back into the clan after this. I mean, someone is going to find out that he killed him. Even though they wanted Big Foster dead, Asa said at the end of the episode that he's done here, that he doesn't want to be part of the mountaintop anymore. He doesn't feel like he's home there, but he also doesn't feel like he's home off the mountaintop either. So he really doesn't know, where his path lies, and I think that Asa is going to do a lot of soul searching in Season 2. I think he's really going to find what his true purpose is, because no matter what, it's just not with this family. This family is not and we've seen that, throughout the first scene of the show. This is not where Asa's supposed to be. It's very dangerous for him to be here, and I like that Asa is kind of steering away from them. I'm very interested in seeing Gwen as the Brennan, though, because this is something that's going to be very interesting. Now that she's the Brennan, I think this is something that Gwen's wanted to be for a while. Again, I think she definitely has the, she's very strategic in that sense. She has the intellectual ability for it. She, again, is very reasonable, and I think that Gwen definitely is the one to be the Brennan, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that is throughout the season. That's going to be very interesting, as well as where they decide to take her. Sally Ann and Hassel, they didn't exactly have a ton of resolution in this finale. We know in episode 12 that she was kind of upset with him, and that, she, it seemed like things weren't great between them, because, she saw the kind of stuff that the Farrells do, and she kind of got a little bit scared of it and a little bit skittish. So we don't really know what's going to happen there, if these two are going to get back together, if she's going to stay captured. We don't really know. But that's something I'm definitely interested in seeing. We know that Big Foster, obviously captured her, and in fact, he captured many of the Farrells, including Sally Ann, so I don't really know where they're going to go. I hope they take them in a very good direction. I really like their storyline. I definitely don't want that to end. But now we got this war going on. This is going to add a whole new conflict to the show, because now Wade has no choice. He needs to get involved. He needs to take action, and that's something about Wade that was very well portrayed throughout the show, that he realized that he can't just stand idly back and just let them, do what they need to do. He needs to take action. He needs to put an end to this in any way he can, even if it's a violent way, and he might have to do that. The Farrells seem like they resort to violence, but with Gwen in charge, that might not be the case. Gwen might be able to find a way to handle this in a way that's not violent, in a way that's more just professional, and I think that's something that I'm definitely interested in seeing, is what's really going to happen with the rest of the workers and the rest of the town now on the mountain. What's going to happen there? That's something that we really didn't get a ton of this season. We saw interactions between the two, but for the most part, those stayed as two separate stories, and it looks like this season, season 2, they're really going to start to come together, and that's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is what's really going to happen with all that, with them coming together. It's something I'm definitely interested in seeing, is what ends up happening with that. And then Lil Foster. Now that Big Foster's dead, I don't know where Lil Foster's going to go throughout the rest of the show. He seemed like he just didn't want to get involved. Is he going to go back to Gwen? Are they going to stay together? Is Gwen possibly going to go back to Asa? I don't think that's going to happen. They kind of hint to the fact that those two are done and that they really have no shots of being together. But as far as Gwen and Lil Foster go, do they possibly have, a relationship still? What's going to happen there? What are going to be the repercussions of that with Gwen as the Brennan now? There are just so many places they can take Season 2. They can expand the world more. They can get us more into who Gwen is as a character. I want to learn more about Lil Foster. I felt like that was the one character we just didn't get to know a lot about. I mean, we definitely got the sense he didn't have the best relation with Big Foster, but definitely I want to learn more about their overall relationship, who they are as characters. Definitely more of who Hassel is, because we know who Hassel is, but at the same time we don't, so I'm interested in getting into that as well. But overall, guys, I really did love this season. Apart from a few little character flaws, this season was pretty close to perfect. It's a very underrated show that handled a topic that I don't think is portrayed a lot, and handled it in a much different, unconventional way, just like the show itself is unconventional, and I'm definitely going to give this season of Outsiders a 4.75 out of 5, or an A. Guys, this is one of the most underrated shows on TV. I never in a million years thought I would be watching this show. I had no intention really to watch it, but Honestly, I thank you guys for recommending it to me because it really is fantastic. It tackles a subject and a culture that's not represented a lot and actually does show you the way they live and gets you to sympathize with them while also getting you to understand why people want them off their land, and does it in a very sympathetic but effective way. It was very emotional, and definitely through season 2 you can tell the show is going to evolve in a much more violent direction than we think, and I'm very interested in seeing where the show ends up heading into that direction. But overall, guys, this is a very underrated show that I think all of you should definitely check out if you haven't yet, and definitely will surprise you because you're thinking it's going to go in one direction and it doesn't, and that's something that made the show that much better. But overall, guys, I'm going to review the season of Outsiders, and from here on out, guys, I know that I am late because literally season 2 premiered Tuesday. I am sorry about that. I meant to review this back last weekend, but I just didn't get the chance to do that. So now I'm in the position where one episode is aired, but I will definitely try to air said episode this weekend. I don't know exactly when, but I'll definitely try to do that. But overall, guys, from here on out, I will be reviewing every episode of the show. Definitely, you kind of have to. But let me know what you guys thought of the show. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. Do you have the same complaints that I do? Where do you think season 2 is really going to take us? If you've seen the season 2 premiere, please don't try to spoil it. I heard some very major things happening, and I don't really want to know what happens. But that was the video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the series premiere of the highly anticipated CW show Riverdale, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.